So I'm going to have the full screen. So everybody will be able to see it big and clear. So my name is Ivan Mar, based in Hong Kong. Now this is the English section. So for people in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Korea, and also Vietnam and many other places, we see participants from everywhere. Welcome to join webinar. There are people behind this webinar. We have Ryan, Hernando, Sunny, Ivan Du. So we have a team. So the team will be sharing, to help answering questions. If you have questions during the seminar, you can freely click the Q&A button and submit the questions. We have the team to answer your question. You don't need to wait until the end of the seminar. As usual, the information for today, it may contain some information which most likely for the information purpose. So this is the technical sections. And it is going to be around 1 hour. Mostly it is the demos. I will be doing the demonstrations on screen. And there is, as what I said, there's question and answer tape that you can click and you can submit your questions in there. During my sections, which I'm working on, so you still can submit your questions. Our team will help answer the questions. At last, we'll get the last piece of Q&A, which may be some questions which have not yet answered. I will respond to your question online. And there will be feedback polling questions. At the end, please help answering the questions. So what is data protection? So we want data to be secure. We do not want data to be stolen or visible to people which they are not authorized to access. We need to assess, we need to prevent, we need to know and detect what happened. And when something happened, we need to recover the data. So at the bottom, we may actually see data we store in the storage, and MySQL is the database to store the data. We run on the operating system. That might be the bare metal. That can be inside the VM and is communicated through the network. And the application, it connects to the database via the connectors. People may also call this drivers, JDBC driver, ODBC driver, and as a whole, MySQL, we call this together connectors. And data is floating around all the database, and that may be in a HA highly available manner. The HA is also one of the areas which we may look at to protect the data. And people may access the data via the login, the authentication, who you are, and are you authorized to look at it, to edit, to update the data. And the connection, the application may connect to the database, and database may connect to another database via the replications. And these connections, we may want to protect and encrypt the data. And this is the transit. Data in transit, we want the data to be protected and encrypted. And there's also the data sit on the storage, which we call this data at rest. And we need the data to be protected. And this is encrypted features that in MySQL, we have the TDE, transparent data encryption. And we also need to be aware, backup and restore, which we also need this to protect our data. And today, we are going to highlight these two items. One is the data at rest, we call TDE, and one is what we call the backup restore, and we use MySQL Enterprise Backup. So let's get started. MySQL is not purely just one standalone database and without redundancy. People look at architectures, very likely they need highly available structure. And we have the InnoDB cluster. In April, MySQL Show and Tell, we ran the webinars once, and we explain what it is, InnoDB cluster. It is highly available cluster, and we have the MySQL shell and MySQL routers to offer transparent access to the group of the servers. And applications connects to the router and transparently access any of the server without knowing which one is up or down. And the monitor is actually monitors and gives you notifications what's happened in this group of servers. So data is protected and all available to those instances. So with the data protection, we need this data to be protected all along the data set or the server. So one of which we call this backup. So why this is important? Because our system has to run always online without disruption. And that's why we call this online backup. And we need this. We don't want to back up and the database has to be stopped. And we need to minimize the interruption and the full or incremental backup to shorten the time that when we back up, it has to be fast enough to back up the data. And it has to be protected. And data has to be encrypted or compressed. And when we put the data on the disk, which eventually, when data is updated and created on the database, it reach the storage. So we need this storage to have the data, but in the encrypted form. So MySQL, we offer CTDE, transparent data encryption. And there is also people look at how we audit the data. And MySQL Enterprise Editions, we offer the enterprise audit. And this for people may look at compliance or to filter what they really want to audit. And there are people actually, they look at how we protect the data by locking out people actually accessing data which we don't like it. So we have the enterprise firewall. We learn the SQL pattern and we build the whitelist, the SQL whitelist that we know this maybe in the QA time, pre-production time, that we register all this SQL pattern, the select statement, the field list, the where clause, which tables we are actually doing the work. So we learn the SQL pattern and register in the whitelist. We only pass all this register whitelist, but if there are SQL coming into the database without registrations, we block them. That's what we call enterprise firewall. So let's get started with the first part, which we talk about the backup. We need the data, which to be protected. And when the time comes, we lost, we need to backup maybe the day before, the hour before, and we need the data back. So there are people actually talking many types of backup. Many people, when they use Community, they may look at the storage base, the live VM snapshot, the log storage snapshot, or mysqldump, which come with the software, and it is logical backup. And there are people actually using the slave through the replication and backup from the slave. And there are people using the enterprise editions. We call this MySQL Enterprise Backup. So in here, we can see that for all this, people do a lot with full data set backup. But which one can actually handle incremental? For sure, there are people using enterprise backup, which can minimize the times to back up maybe only the data which has been updated during the day. So this is a minimized size. And for the storage, to keep minimized storage size, the incremental is quite effective. And there are ways that people may look at to back up just 1, 2, 3 important tables. So the partial backup is also one of the areas that people may look at. And how's the compressions? So database, we store data, and the data somehow very much like text, numbers, they are very, very compressible. So what that means for a database which we want to compress, very likely it can up to 80% compress ratio or even higher. So the compression support is kind of very, very efficient, effective ways to save the space. And when we do backup, we want things to be online, people, the application still updating, accessing the data. So how this is possible to do this without actually breaking the database, the integrity. So this physical MySQL Enterprise backup is very efficient physical backup by having the data on the file, on the storage, to copy and to stream the data. And at the end, the stage, what it does, it actually apply the redo and do lock to make sure the snapshot at the end is just the one snapshot all along all the data in all the tables. And there should be point in time consistent. That's very important. Just like when we do MySQL dump logically to dump the data, we dump the first table, maybe the first on the time one, and by the time we back up the last table, the time has gone. And people update the master and child tables. We back up the child table, and those two tables at the end will not be consistent, and we recover the data from the logical SQL file. We get the inconsistent data. So we need this consistent data backup, but we have the online. So we need a fast backup. So all this actually we put up some comparisons and we sure that people like the way MySQL Enterprise Backup, what we are going to demonstrate today. So let's look at what it is, MDB, MySQL Enterprise Backup Recovery. And it can back up full, incremental, and point in time, compressed, encrypted, and we don't lock the data. So let's look at it a little bit more. So first, we try to introduce you the MySQL Workbench, which actually integrate well with the enterprise backup. When this is the Enterprise Edition Workbench, we have the enterprise backup integration. Now, I'm going to switch to demo sections. So this is the MySQL Workbench. And there's a connections which comes to here. I look at the connection details. I have the database, which is hosting in VM, and the IP address is something 192.168.56 and 41. And I'm having the SSH tunnel and connecting to it by having the username and password. And there's a database running in this machines. And the port number is opens to 3306. And there's the root and the password being stored somewhere here. And I'll be going to have the remote management and using the MySQL user as OS user. And there's a system profile, which is using Linux. And there's configuration file, how I can store this, and also the config file where I put this and how I shut it down. And all this, I put it in the configurations in the Workbench. So let's look at how I'm doing this. I'm connecting to it, and at the same time, on the screen, there is the terminal. So the terminals right here, basically, there is the MySQL up and running. So the MySQL up and running, and I'm able to access the port 3306 locally, and the password right here is MySQL. So at the back of the Workbench, this is the terminal, and I have the online backup. When I click on this online backup, and this connects to the server via the SSH tunnel. And this actually provides access how we back up remotely, actually using the Workbench interface. I have already configured the backup with where the backup versions and software and how and where to put the data, and also the account which I have configured in the database. So let's do a configuration and create a job, and to do a full backup for every hour in the 00 minute. And there is also the configurations talking about how we do incremental every hours at the last point of time, like 45. And we put a backup name, which is today, 2019-0611. And this is the test backup. And then I save and configure. There are other content which we can do this by having options by clicking what it is. And there are things that we can put in certain options. So I'm going to create this folder, which will be sitting on the server. So look at this. When we do this, basically, this is the way where we will be seeing the MySQL backup and under the Workbench. Right now, there's only 2 folders right into it. I create this one, and this one will see the folders actually sitting on the VM, which is the machines. When I'm having this, the configuration basically is configured, and we have this by having the content list is configured with the content, and it's running schedulely by what we mean by the schedule. So I start this backup in full execute now. So this is the backup to start. The backup, it has a lot of data. So this is a demo database which I have already created. And this tries to back up the data, load blocking. I'm still able to run the application, access, update, and create data. And this is finished. So if I look at this one more time, we can see this. The data is actually sitting inside the backup folder 2019 today. So this is easy to use, configurable, and we can execute incremental backup as well by clicking this or through the schedule. So Workbench is the way how we easily to integrate this backup, okay, by click, point, and click. And there's an options right here when we do this by having the MySQL Enterprise Monitor. And we have the interface by logging to this MEM, MySQL Enterprise Monitor. We are able to see clear how we do these things on this backup. Let's look at the database which I have already configured and on the 3306 on that machines. If I look at the backup, I will be able to see clear how many times I did the backup and what is the status. So with this, the last backup, which I've just clicked, is 227, which I did it. So I have only 30 minutes left. So there are graphs right here, and we are able to see clear what happened, how many backup success, incremental, full backup, what happens to here? Anyhow, let's move on to the next. So the first, what about the backup with the traditional way, MySQL dump versus MEB? Here it is. So I have the database. What is the size of the database? Let's look at this clear. So I have the script which is running with the size. And here is talking about the database which is run with 390 MB data. So this is right here, it is quite similar. So in the past, I did this. So the time to do the MySQL dump, it took around 38 seconds, not that long. Let's do it one time. So here, there is a time which does. Okay, so I have just a MySQL dump database and log all the tables, and to put this to run and to dump this and take time, which what it said is 38 seconds to run. And what happened if it is restored or actually to run? So in the next screen right here is talking about to backup is 38 seconds. But to restore the smaller one, there is 5 minutes. I'm not going to run to restore because it takes too long time. This is 6 minutes to restore the database. So what about MEB? So this is a lot faster. It's talk about 8 seconds to backup and also 9 seconds to restore. So this is much better way of doing things. So here is still running. My machine is slow. So what happened here for this is 46 seconds to back up the 390 MB database on my one machines, which is SSD still very good, but only the CPU is very small. So there is also the MySQL Enterprise backup. So what it does, I'm trying to run this backup again. So which is here, I have the CO2 backup to image. Let's run it. So how long it takes? Only a few seconds. Hopefully we did this. Actually, when I click, the way, okay, it's using the Workbench, we did the backup. So I hope this actually works. So basically, if we look at, so here a lot longer, 90 seconds. And this is just other information just to cat the logs. And there are ways in here that we are actually going to remove the data and restore the image and start the database. Look at this a little bit more. So this is the backup. So basically, the backup is just one single command. If we need to do this without the Workbench, we do this by having the MySQL backup, which is bundled with the enterprise version. And we log into the port number server and having the access using should be other kind of users. For example, MySQL backup users. For this demo, I use the root, which is not a good practice. And where I put the data, here is the full backup and put in the timestamp and backups to a file. And I do the compress and backups to somewhere. So the rest is just to have the log files. So this is quite simple way of doing this by using command line or the visual GUI through the Workbench. So what next here? Let's look at how we do this full incremental and encrypted compressed backup. Forgive me, I'm not going to restore the data as the demo in here at this point to save a little bit time. So let's look at how this works. First, I do, again, the full backup, and I will actually make a few delta, which the delta is another database, which has the size very small, and I create the incremental backup, which should be smaller database. So let's look at this. There is the create delta. So let's look at the 21, how we do this to create the delta. So it's simply to create the Delta data by having the first, second table, it has the data, but create into the other database. So I'm creating the Delta data. So that means if I look at this time, to check database size, I have extra. So now I have to extract my Delta data. So what next? I'm going to have this to backup incremental. So what this means, by having this, I backup to image, which this is the incremental image. And then I'm going to have the backup by having incremental, and based on the one that I did, the backup image, which I did. So what this means, I create a backup incremental. I have the full backup, I have the incremental backup. And in fact, when I having this, I can look at the other way here. So if I'm going to refresh this, I'm going to see the data actually putting into the dashboard. If it is failed, we may get notified by email as an MP and something like this. So you'll be able to see that there are things that we actually put the backup in here. So, and why there is actually delay of the information is because the incremental backup at the end, this will be pushed back to the server, which we are monitoring the server. So there is a time lag between we can monitor. Maybe a few minutes later, this will be populated with data. So we see that the data actually in here. So right here, we have the incremental and we have the backup. So let's do a little bit more. Let's remove the data and restore all this. So to remove this, this is just to delete everything about the 3306 data, and I'm going to remove everything. So this is simply to remove the folder. It's the data, shut it down and clean, and everything's gone. So with this, I have no more 3306 data. Shut down the database and remove the data. This is wrong because let's look at this again. I'm sorry to do this because I'm trying to run this. I shouldn't have this. Just remove it. So all this data is gone. So there's no more 3306 data. So the data is gone. Let's look at this. I'm trying to restore the image. How I can actually restore the image? I put the database running. So the database is not running. So because I have extra database running, I make sure I have it. So now I will restore the full image, which I put into image, the full database image, and restore it to the database. And then uncompress it and apply the log at the end. So I will actually step by steps going through this. So let's do this by having 24 to restore the data, and to uncompress, I hit enter, uncompress and apply. Now, the data is back, but this is the full image. So this is full image 24, and I'm going to apply the incremental. How I have to apply the incremental? Because the full plus incremental is actually the delta altogether, the data. So I apply the delta and apply the incremental backup and copy back the data to the 3306 data folder. So here, I'm going to apply the data in a quick way, and it will put back and start the database. And we will getting back the database instantly. So right now, when I have this is restored incremental, and now I can basically to start the database, and you can see that here, this is to start the database by having the things right here. So I'm going to remove these few lines because I have this no more just to start it. Just to start using MySQL save and using the configuration pointing to 3306 folder. So 27 start and the database is up and running. So if I look at the MySQL, I have many others because the monitoring server is on the same box. So the 3306 is running, which is on the my1.cnf. So what this is here is I can run to the 3306 and password the same. What is the database size with this? Delta is back. So I have exactly the same database as what I did, okay, before I removed all the data. So let's look at this, the demo 3. There are things that the backup and restore, which we are not just to create the backup for at the end to crash, but there are people using the backups to provisions and other instance. Here, if we are using MySQL database, we have the full backup, and this has to restore to another server which can be on another machines, and that is used to be in other instance and connect them together and as the cluster. So here it is the fact. We have the database and then we do the full backup. And this full backup, by default, there is no auto.cnf as UUID. The server UUID is actually stored in here. And there is also persistent consistent data, which it is stored in the MySQL d-auto.cnf. This is persistence variables. So the full backup, we copy both if we need to. And then we provision that on another server. So when we provision this one as another server, we do not need the auto CNF because they have to be individual server, which is different, UUID and server ID. And we need this, the configuration to be a little bit different. The data directory, log errors, part number, socket, server ID. For my case, they are all sitting on the same VM. So I have the others, my.cnf, my1.cnf, my2.cnf, my3.cnf. But so happen they are quite similar, except those actually the path variable. So what the next? In here, I'm going to create this with the InnoDB cluster. So here, I have another folder, which I start only the 3306, which I have the 3306 running. And with this 3306 running, what I'm doing is to configure first with the MySQL shell and putting additional remote administration user, which we call this gradmin and grpass, the password. So when I reprovision this to the instance 2 and 3, it will contain additional informations. So what I'm doing is I just configure this, and this on the 3306. And then I will back up the image, which is quite similar. I just back up the image, and I will restore this image to another 2 instance, 3316, 3326. And I have done this. So now I will restore this to 41 just to recreate this. So basically, I have one full backup image, and I restore to 2 folders. I restore to a temporary folder and copy back to 2 folders. And the data, they are all basically the same. So I have now two data folder, which is we have 3316 folder and 3326 folder, and they are the port number which I'm going to access. And they will be actually on the same machines, and I will be creating this as cluster. So if I look clearly, this, the restore, basically, I will remove those two data folder, and this to be restored is the template folder which will be used to restore into the 16 and also 26. So the image which is used as the last one, which I did the demo, okay, so the image will be used to restore and to restore through the my one, and using the my2.cnf, the port folder, all this actually they are different, and to copy back to the my2 and also the my3. So next, when this actually finish, 42 start the database. This is basically, if I look at this clearly, just to start the other two servers up and running, and then my test1.r is just the information which is basically, it is up and running. So those three servers, they are actually configured well, config, which basically, oh, that's not a very good way. So you'll be able to see this. They are the my2, my1, and my3, they are up and running. So when they have all started, I can create a cluster and they will be able to run. And here, look at this simple procedure to how to actually create a cluster. My machine is very slow at this moment. Hopefully you can still hear me because the machine is slow in resources. Let me stop the monitor because the monitor is eating too much memory. So this is 43, create InnoDB cluster. So I'm going to stop the monitor. Likely the memory is used up, it is swapping. So I have to queue now. So time is 47. So let's look at this. So we have done this full backup and we restore to 3316, 3326, and we build the cluster using the backup. And there's also the way we do the node recovery. Basically, the node recovery means that we may have the node crash, and then the full backup is actually used to restore the 3326 because the 626 may crash and destroyed or you moved away. So we can actually do this by having this, and as well as we can use this MEB together with TDE. So let's do this. I'm trying to queue this service first. This is Java and kill this. Yep. So, okay, now this is much better. The memories come back. So we have just start the database. Now create the cluster. It's the authority-free. So this one, when we create the cluster, it connects to the 3306 and the cluster will build up. And this is actually, we build a 3-node cluster, InnoDB cluster. So we use this MEB, the enterprise backup, to restore to the node 2, node 3, and they all comes together. So you will be able to see this clear. And now with this, I have already get this done and MySQL shell. And if I connect this gradmin, grpass, and to the primary, this is the IP address, and as well as the node 1, and I'm able to see that cluster status, and it is running with all 3 nodes online. So with this, the next what I'm going to do is make the server crash and re-provision back this 3326. We have the 3306, 16, and 26, and we can restore and start, and we can check the status. So this is the InnoDB cluster, how we do this, as well as we can re-provision additional, add more process, and add another server by having the backup. So this is the way how we can use the MEB. But the tricky part in here, look at this. I tried to make the crash. This is the 3326 crash. So I will be killing the server and removing that. So having said that, I'm trying to shut down the server, the 3326, and remove the data folder for the 26. So if I look clear where the data is sitting in, there is 330616, but 26 has gone. So there's no more. What I need to do this is I can provision the data by having the 3316 to back up and restore to the 36 because they're supposed to be the same. So that's why the 52 in here is basically by having the 16 data, which is to back up the database 16. And this is talking about where to log in and back up the image to the 3316. And by having this, to use this backup data to restore to the 26. So this is how I do this. So when I having this, running this, I will create the 26 data back. So the 16 is getting data. So what next in here is the 16 back and restore to 26. So similar the way I restore the data. So no more 26, suppose not running, and we get to this and using the image, which is the 26 and restore. Here's the image is from the 16 and restores to the 26 using my3.cnf. So here the 33 to restore the data and copy back and right here. Copy back. So basically, the data will be back online if I look at the database. And you'll be able to see the 26 coming back, but the data is actually from the 3316. So what next? We actually look at the MySQL shell at this moment. So if I look at this gradmin, grpass, and from the point 3306, basically DBA get cluster.status, we see that the 26 is actually missing because it's not up and running. So what next? I have already restored, am I correct? Yes. So I need to start it. So by checking this, I'm able to see this getting up and recovering. So the 26 is back and online. So the last part of the demo is the TDE. So with all this 3306, 26, and 1626 and 3-node cluster, we can shut all down the server and start the database again with difference. So how I can shut down the server? Let's look at this. I go into the 26, 16, and 06 to shut down the machines. So the nodes, they will be shut down. And I will reboot the server using the TDE command. So what this means, the configuration is a little bit different. If I start the server this time, it will be the my.cnf right here. So what are the difference? Look at those. The difference in here is I have the extra things about how I put the key ring and where the encrypted keys that we put this in and using the password as password. And they are all here. So they are the difference. So they are all the difference in here. So let's start this by having the configurations. The last 5 minutes in here, I start this. And the cluster, I need to reboot the cluster. So we need to wait to restart the cluster. So 03, we put the cluster because the 3 server are booting up, and I need to bring the cluster back online. So this one, I will be waiting until the status of the server is just settled. So you will be seeing that there is errors, which the server is trying to ping the other server to see if there are servers still up and running in the cluster. But in fact, the whole cluster is down. That's why we need to wait a little bit, okay, until this one actually settles. And getting back, I will coming back to restart this. So what that actually TDE means? Here, the create table, we can define the encryption equal to no. That means data will just plain text and clear text storing in the server on the storage. But having said that, with the TDE, we create the table or we alter the table by having the encryption equal to yes. And the data, when it is written to the file, and the IBD table space file is encrypted with the keys, and the keys are also encrypted. So this is the way that we do the InnoDB cluster and circulates around all these machines. So again, when we talk about security, we need to see how we access, and the enterprise monitor is actually able to tell you what happened. And we prevent people from hacking your server, firewall, TDE, or actually the password is stored externally using LDAP or Active Directory. We may have the audits to protect, and then you need to recover, you can actually use the audit. And we have the HA or enterprise backups to back up a store and to recover your database. So a lot more. There's 8.0 security features. We talked about the TDE, and it enables the log encryption as well, and bin log encryptions. And there's also the changing password. And when we change the password with the 8.0 UR prompt, actually you can define your prompts to enter the current password before you can edit. So people hijack your section and then they cannot change the password. This is a protection. And there is also a dual password support in 8.0 one for after. Actually today, we have the version 8016. So what is dual password? The two password support. It is very good way to actually for production system to have two passwords, because when we have the applications and the server, we change the password, the database password, the application cannot connect. But what if the old password is still retained and the new password is actually updated? By the time we change all the password in the application, then we can remove the old password and discard the old password. So this actually is supported in the 8.016 already. So there are other things like this, okay? Here, create a user, just only one password, alter user, but still retain the current password. And then we can log in with the old or new password. By the time all application change with the new password, we can discard the old password and at the end, the old password cannot connect. So they are actually a very effective way of doing the password, particularly in the production system, which we have many applications pre-configured with the password. And there is actually additional administrative connection management. So let's go back here. We put this. Okay. So we join, and then we just wait a little bit to click yes, the 2.6, otherwise 2 at the same time. They may actually, yeah, right here. So the cluster will come back. And here the TDE, so here, as what I said, data is actually stored clear text if the encryption is no, or actually by default. And the encryption is equal to yes, yeah, people cannot see clear from the tables. So the keys is actually managed and secure. It can be the encrypted key store or somewhere in the Oracle key vault or the Matos key scale or the TALUS, the volumetric key management, they are all supported. So here is also extra informations. And you may see that the key, when this actually on the InnoDB cluster, they are physically different. That means you cannot just copy the file from one machine to another machine. So this is very secure and more secure than just exactly the same server and physically the same, but data is actually exactly the same. So I hope this sections go over all this. And at last, here, there is actually one thing that I want to bring this up. So with the latest version of 8.0.16, and when we do MySQL Enterprise backup, very likely people may see flush table with read logs at the end. So we see that when we back up InnoDB, we do not lock any tables. But in 5.7, there are data directory, data dictionary, which is system data. The system tables may be my ISAM and files. So how this is possible to back up to make sure integrity to be maintained. We lock all the table at the last stage for 1 minute or less, then we back up all these tables or files. And with the new version 8.0.16, we do not need this. We don't use the flush table with read logs. We do this by having extra locking mechanism. So what that means, the new way, here we have the backup logs, on the server instance which block DDL but not DML. So this is a lot more efficient way to do backup with the locking. So this is the summary of today. And here, this is just 1 hour. Finally, in here, I just want to run this, the tables, and they are all active. And if I look at the tables, you can see from the check my table, we can see that the IBD, I can see clear the data. Just get the file. You can see clear the data. But what about the encrypted tables? So I cannot see clear the text. So that means what it means by encrypted tables. So this is all efficient. And if I look at the key file, head_stump, so this is the key files which is encrypted to the file on the server 1, on the server 2, on the server 3. They are all different. Anyway, this is about the end sections, but I try to look at your questions. Oh, all answered. Thank you. I'm opening up the final polling questions, so please help to fill up the feedback. There are 3 questions. So if you still have any questions, please submit to the Q&A. We will answer you, okay, in here. So there is a questions asking MEB, MySQL Enterprise backup features, whether this is native coming with the Enterprise Edition. Yes, MEB comes with Enterprise Editions, correct. There is no extra so-called options, okay? MEBs come with EE license. If you have further questions, please submit in the Q&A. So another questions regarding the MySQL Enterprise Monitor. So for MySQL Enterprise Editions, it include MEB, MEM. It's like all this we demonstrate today is all included. So there's no extra required license that you need to go with the Enterprise Edition. Just one Enterprise Edition license is actually there. So what that means, what the Enterprise Monitors means or MEB is. So you back up the server, which has license you can use. So you cannot have the MEB and then run. It should not actually back up the so-called community license, because we actually talk about the server which it has the license to use, the MEB or MEM. Regarding the presentations today, I will share through the emails to send to you. So I will put to some places and I'll share the link. So the information will be distributed to everyone later. So I'm still waiting for other people actually filling up the feedback. So please, there are 5 minutes. I'm going to close the sections. Thank you for everyone joining this one. Thanks a lot. So the last questions. So what are the key differentiators for having the enterprise editions? So in short, database, we need this to be secure to use. And we need to manage the database easily. We need this more reliable. With community additions, it's just a workable database. You need to do it by yourself. Everything's, you do it manually. But with the enterprise edition, you back up faster, much faster. You have additional tools. You have the Workbench, how you actually schedule the backup, audit. So there are features that make sure that you can actually run your database in a more secure way, easy to manage and easy to monitor and more reliable. So for your database, and it is critical, and your data is critical, you want to protect it. So this is it. Hope this answers your question. Okay. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.